Cameron, thanks so much for giving me time to do this interview this afternoon for the Fizzy newsletter.
Pleasure.
So Cameron, you're one of Fizzy's very valued and treasured researchers as part of our Fellows and Friends network. So thank you very much for the time that you give to Fizzy in supporting and helping us think about our work. You're currently an Associate Professor at the Centre for People, Organisation and Work in the School of Management at RMIT, and leading a very large Ahuri research piece inquiry program exploring pathways out of institutional care, which is absolutely fascinating. And I'd love to have a longer conversation with you about what you're finding about that, but we'll do that another time.
Perfect.
What I'm really interested today is to talk to you because you have also held a management leadership role at a healthcare delivery centre for mental health services in Vancouver in Canada, and you have really your significant research interests, and I love the way this is described. I think this is from your LinkedIn profile. The interests are in health and social problems in cities. What I'm interested in is why you, having worked both as a part of the operational practitioner world and in universities, why are you a researcher? What is it you're passionate about research?
My sense is that you know, we've got big problems in cities. We've got big health problems. We've got big problems with access to healthcare. We've got big problems with identifying the best ways to deliver care to people, particularly in vulnerable circumstances. We've got big social problems in cities to do with inequality and disadvantage. And these are the sorts of problems that require deep thinking to find maybe not solutions as much as just ways forward, right? You know, new responses, new ways of thinking. I think there are, you know, these are big problems that we probably can't solve even over decades, but we need to find effective ways of responding, effective ways of improving the way we deliver care, effective ways of thinking about disadvantage. And what I realized, I think, working in Vancouver is that, you know, those are research questions as much as they're service delivery questions. You know, that there's a question about how do you deliver effective mental health treatment for vulnerable people in a community. You know, that's you know, one way of approaching that is by way of service design, service delivery solutions. But another way is to think about, well, what are the sort of the deep underlying drivers of these problems? And I think what I realized working in healthcare management in Vancouver was that I feel like I'm more interested, or I can make a stronger contribution in addressing those sort of deeper, bigger, more meaty research questions, because I think a lot of the times, particularly with service design, service delivery debates, you know, the sense is that there's just not enough time to really understand everything about this problem because we have to act now. And the sense is that we don't really have time to design. We don't have the luxury of time to design, you know, a world-class solution. So we just have to do the best we can right now. And I think what I realized is, you know, if we had better research that was packaged more effectively, that was designed in ways that responded more explicitly to what practitioners need, then research can make a very big difference in those circumstances to, you know, meaningful change in people's lives. And so I realized that you know, research can be a big part of the conversation if it's designed in ways that are effective, that answer the right kinds of questions, and then you know, with research findings that are packaged in a way that's going to be useful for people. And that's, I think, you know, what research is. You know, we're not as good as that as we should be.
So Cameron, I'm an operational person, and I come from the world of, you know, I've spent most of my career in the sector, and I think part of what is fascinating about what Fizzy brings to the intersection between practitioners and researchers is how to bring those different perspectives together, and it's challenging, right? Because they come from very different worlds. So having crossed over that a bit yourself, how do you think we do that? How do we best bring together practice, wisdom, knowledge, operational kind of constructs and research in a way to innovate, to help make people's lives better?
Well, I think that I mean, it's a really crucial question, but I think that the key is to recognize that it's important to ask that question, you know, because I think a lot of times, you know, what we forget is that there's a really strong division of labor in the way we think about policy problems. Typically, there's a sense that, researchers typically based in universities, their proper role is to generate the evidence that then practitioners can use somewhere else at some other time to design programs and to deliver better care. So the sense is there's that natural division of labour between researchers on the one hand who are concerned with problems and evidence, and then practitioners on the other who are concerned with design and operational matters, more practical concerns, if you like. And I think that the problem is that that has seemed to a lot of people to be a really natural way of doing things, a way that works. And the problem is, what I learned in Vancouver is it really doesn't work, because what happens then is you've got researchers framing questions the way researchers think is appropriate, and that's typically in a very scholarly way that's in response to a literature or a set of conceptual problems. And then you've got policymakers, practitioners who are interested oftentimes in a very different set of questions, and they go and talk to researchers and say, well, hang on, the stuff that you've developed, that doesn't really suit me. That doesn't really answer the questions that I think are important. I'm sure it's very fascinating for you guys, but it's not very useful. And I think, and researchers then get a bit snooty sometimes and say, well, hang on, we've spent all this time developing this evidence. Shouldn't you be a bit more grateful? So I think there's historically been a little, almost sort of, degrees of hostility between researchers and practitioners, because there is that sense of, talking two different languages. So my feeling is that an organization like FISI is critically important for bringing people together and having those open discussions about, what more effective approaches might be useful in having researchers and practitioners sit down together and co-design responses to particular kinds of problems. And so that kind of honest broker role, if you like, I think is so crucial, because I think researchers oftentimes feel that we need more time to look at these things more carefully. We need more time to understand problems, and I think practitioners often get a bit frustrated that we don't have all day. We need to do something now. And so I think that an organisation like FISI really fulfills that crucial role of helping bring people together and open up a space for questions about, what is research for? What do we need research for? The crucial thing that I learned in Vancouver is that it's that idea of, practitioners need evidence to make decisions. Practitioners want evidence. They want to be able to design programs knowing with some degree of confidence that what they do, what they end up implementing, will be effective, will work, will be useful. And I think, what that typically means is that practitioners want a sense of, how can we package research evidence in a way that's going to help decision makers make decisions, not write long scholarly articles about things, but make decisions. And I think that what I learned in Vancouver was that that idea of what research is for. Yes, it's about evidence, but it's more about a set of resources that can help practitioners, policymakers make decisions under conditions of oftentimes extreme urgency and oftentimes, particularly in areas of social care, quite a degree of political sensitivity. And so I think that idea that things become policy problems in cities, oftentimes with a huge amount of political heat. And that means that there's not always the time to, sit back at your leisure, make careful scholarly judgments about things. It's about how can we co-design effective responses that certainly are informed by evidence and are conscious of research and are mindful of the need for a strong, research grounding for things, but also are timely, politically feasible, are responsive to communities, take into account social context, these sorts of things. And so I think again, an organisation like FISI can, in a sense, it kind of creates a space for researchers and practitioners to sit down and have some of those deeper, more difficult conversations about what is research for, how do practitioners use research, how do practitioners make sense of research, how can we start talking the same language a bit more effectively?
That's incredibly helpful, I think, Cameron. I think, and I smiled when you said historically there has been that division. I think that this is an ongoing journey for all of us. I think for everybody it's always really difficult to understand each other's different professional paradigms and language and drivers, very different drivers. So learning ways to speak to each other and listen to each other is an ongoing challenge that, yes, I think we've had some real success in, and is something that's a really important part of FISI's role. So Thank you very much for, there's a lot more I would like to ask you and talk about, but it's an ongoing conversation. So
Perfect.
Thanks, Cameron.
Look forward to the next iteration.
Thank you. I just realised too that I didn't at the outset of this conversation say, and I think it's really important, even though we're doing all of this work online at the moment, and we're all doing it. I think someone described where we're living at work rather than working from home,
yes.
that we're doing that on Aboriginal land, and that I want to pay my respects to Aboriginal people, their culture, their leaders, and the work that Fizzies has and responsibility we have to be helping empower and resource those leaders for the future to be able to answer those really difficult questions. So thank you.
Pleasure.